Embedded finance is the future of fintech and banking. Banking would be invisible, but it would be available at very specific points in the customer journey. And we go live. In the future years, the cyber attacks are only going to increase. So when it comes to bank customers, them with their money, the quality of cyber security and the data privacy should be top notch. This is one area which is absolutely non-negotiable for the customer, that their financial transactions got leaked at the hands of a bank, or whether the credit card data or other kind of data banking transactions, they got leaked from the banking network. Thus, it is imperative for the bank to protect the customer data, maintain regulatory compliance, and fend off cyber attacks as and when they show up. The firewalls and the cybersecurity system of the banks, as I mentioned, should be top-notch, something that cannot be compromised. And I think the systems need to be regularly checked for bugs. One thing that is interesting that most of these big platform companies offer is to the developers, they tell them that if you manage to find some kind of fault within our systems, then you would be offered a bounty. And Facebook is well known for giving bounty to the hackers. I think banks over a period of time will need to ensure that they have an in-house team of ethical hackers, as I like to call them, whose only job is to ensure that they expose what kind of risks that exist for the banking platforms and the online channels and the offline channels for the banks, and how to ensure that these risks are minimized. The second transformation would be the finance and treasury operations. Banks definitely need help to improve the accounting and finance functions through real-time data and analytics. And this is where it would be very helpful if most of the banking records, they move online and most of the transactions happen online, so that the automation of this finance and treasury function happens by default rather than as a conversion process. There are many startups that are offering these kind of capabilities. One interesting example that comes to my mind is that Amex acquired Kabaj, and Kabaj had the transaction data of all the SME account holders that would apply for loans on its platform, and it would ask for the access to the accounting books of these companies over a period of time, and as a result a lot of information was available. So this is the future of lending solutions and the finance and treasury operations, wherein the companies that they are dealing with, they need to ensure that there is no other kind of risk and need to work very actively with the auditors of the companies and other players in the equation to check whether the data that is being reported in terms of the cash balance and the asset balance is actually the right data, so that later on the fraudulent risk can be minimized. The third is the RPA, or the robotic process automation in banking. Banks definitely need help to automate all the manual processes, data intensive processes. So there are various service providers like UiPath, Data Robot. They can enter into the banking platforms if given access, and they can ensure that what are the various manual processes that the bank currently has, which can be completely automated in a very secure way. And I think a lot of cloud companies are also offering similar kind of solutions, wherein they are offering private clouds to these banks, so that the data is secure. At the same time, customized data lakes could be built, and standardized or customized solutions related to the RPA processes can be provided to these banks. The next area of transformation in the back office of a bank is the digitization of lending and underwriting. Now, this is one area that takes a lot of time. When an individual applies for a bank loan, sometimes it takes up to 2 weeks to 3 weeks before they get the approval letter at their hands. And I'm not just referring to the retail customers, I'm also referring to the corporate lending functions. This is where the banks need to automate the entire lending lifecycle processes, such as applications, underwriting algorithms, funding, servicing, and collection. So how to collect back the debt to minimize the bad debts of the bank over a period of time and to reduce the credit risk. There are many automated solutions that are available that the banks can integrate, which ensure that there is minimal time spent in the lending and the underwriting process, and over a period of time the collection can happen in a very automated way. The fifth point in the bank's back office transformation is related to the infrastructure and the APIs for ecosystem. One thing I would like to say is that in the future, banks will not operate as standalone identities. They need to partner with a lot of other players within the ecosystem that will act as the enabling ecosystem for the financial transactions, or they will act as the newer channels that the banks can use in order to sell more of financial products. Embedded finance is the future of fintech and banking. Imagine you trying to shop something for up to $3,000 on an e-commerce website, but you do not have a credit card with you. because maybe due to some reason your credit card approval did not come, but you still have a banking account with a bank. Is there some kind of integration available wherein the bank allows you to take an overdraft or take a credit based upon your goodwill with the bank, that you can do the transaction because the transaction is important for you? Banking would be invisible, but it would be available at very specific points in the customer journey of transaction. And customer would have multiple needs related to shopping, travel, health, insurance, and food delivery and other things. Now, how can transactions happen, whether they are cash-based transactions or credit transactions? This is where banks must be ready with the API solutions and the infrastructure to integrate with these multiple players that have the user base and that can act as the newer channels or the newer opportunities for growth for the traditional banks that may have maxed out their offline and online channels. The last point related to the bank's back office transformation is related to the digitization of the core banking platforms and launching banking as a service model. And banking as a service feeds well into the previous point that we discussed related to the API and the banking infrastructure. So banks need support in ensuring that their core infrastructure, like how to integrate with the fintechs, insured checking accounts, direct deposits, savings and payments, and apps infrastructure is in place. And what is powering this entire engine? The enterprise platforms behind it, they are fully functional and agile, and they are working in the way that optimize the bank's return on their investment. We recently know that StanChart has launched banking as a service solutions under the brand name of Nexus, and this is a great way traditional banks can actually monetize the new opportunity that exists in this area. And by tying up with the right kind of players in the industry value chain, the e-commerce players, the health insurers, and other companies, they can tap into a bigger market to provide financial products and to sell financial products and to acquire more customers. BBVA is doing that in a big way in Europe, and many traditional banks are going to hop onto the banking as a service model. This is the way they can actually fight the fintechs that do not have the banking licenses yet. This is the new age opportunity available to them in the era of open banking, wherein the banking becomes invisible. People still like to do banking, but it does not necessarily happens with the bank or within the bank channels. These were my thoughts related to the bank's front office, middle office, and back office transformation. What kind of technology solutions will the bank need? Connect with me on LinkedIn, YouTube, Medium, and Twitter to share your thoughts on how banks can transform themselves. There are many other videos available on this topic that I have shared earlier. There is a full video on what kind of questions the banks and the fintechs should be asking themselves in order to make the most of the 2020s. What are the various strategies that the banks should be using in order to self-disrupt their model? I've written extensively on this topic and articles are available on Medium, so I would love to hear your views. This is Sidhartha Sharma signing off. I love to speak about digital transformation and strategy topics and look forward to connecting with you on these social platforms.